Hey there, this is Colin. I had a great phone call from one of my fellow evangelists today, and he was asking me how I would do a sort of a reveal of an image. He said, I want to sort of have the ability to click and drag to reveal part of an image or an entire image, sort of looking at a before and after sort of an idea. And I said, oh, well, in DPS, that would be an image sequence. And let's take a quick look at how I built this. I'm going to leave the content viewer, and you can see here I am in InDesign. What I've built is an image sequence. Now, it's on a back layer, so I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and I'm going to go over to Photoshop now and build it. You can see I've got a background layer which has the color image, and I have a foreground layer where I've created a grayscale version. Now, what I'm going to do is mask the foreground layer and then animate the mask. So the way I do this is by selecting all. Now, when I come down to the Create Mask button, I'm going to hold the Option or Alt key when I create the mask, and that inverts the selection. So we now can see the black mask for the foreground layer masking the grayscale version. Now there's an icon between the pixels, the grayscale image, and the mask, and that means the two are linked. I'm going to click to unlink them. This is going to allow me to animate the position of the mask independent of the pixels. Now, the way I do the animation is I go to the timeline, and I'm going to create a video timeline. I get a default 5-second duration, and I can see the foreground layer here. I'm going to open up the foreground layer, and I'm going to use a combination of the time indicator here in the timeline and some options for the layer mask position. I'm going to click the stopwatch. That turns the layer on for animation, and I'm going to move that time indicator all the way out to 5 seconds. And now I'll use the Move tool, and I'm going to move that mask. I'm going to hold the Shift key down so I only pull horizontally. I'm going to take it almost off of the screen, but not completely. And you now see a diamond at the beginning of the timeline. That's a keyframe for the opening position. And now, as I scrub the timeline, you can see the mask moves towards the second keyframe at 5 seconds. So I'm going to take the time indicator back to 0, and I think I want to add a little bit of an effect, sort of like a scan line. Now, the way I'm going to do this is pick up the rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag and draw a bit of a rectangle. I'm going to make that rectangle, a nice blue. That sort of looks like a scanning color, and I might get fancy by adding an outer glow to it. So let's increase the spread on that. Let's increase the size a little bit. There we go. It's looking good. And now what I need to do is animate the position of this rectangle. So I'm going to do the same thing in the timeline. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to make sure the time indicator is at 0, and I'm going to turn on the vector mask position. And now move the timeline down, and then I move the scan line. So now we get an idea of the scan line and the reveal happening together. So I've done my artwork. I've got the animation. I can click to play it back. That's looking sort of nice. What I need to do now is export the image sequence. To do this, I go to the File menu, choose Export and Render Video. I choose Photoshop Image Sequence. I've selected a destination for it, and I'm going to export JPEGs. I'm going to make it a certain size, and I'm going to export 15 images for each second of content. And I now click Render. The images are now being generated and put into the folder for the image sequence. Once the sequence has been generated, I'm going to go ahead and hide Photoshop. I'm going to return to InDesign now, and let's put it in here. Now, what I'm going to do is target my overlay layer. I'm going to pick up the Frame tool, click and drag to build a frame. The size is not really important right now, because when I choose to add an image sequence and choose the asset, I'm going to go to my assets. Here are the files that I just generated, and I select the folder that holds the images. I click open. The image resizes that frame, and now what I'll do is choose to allow swipe to change the image, and so it doesn't loop, I'm going to choose to stop at the first and last image. So now if I preview this on the desktop of my machine, we're going to see the layout, we're going to see the interaction and the interactivity. Here it is, and Now when I click and drag, I'm activating it. Now, you might notice that my cursor is moving a lot more than that scan line, and that's a feature of this desktop viewer. When I'm working on this on my iPad, the interaction is much closer to a one-to-one, although there's a certain amount of scaling given the width of my display and how far I'm swiping. So I hope this helps you understand a way to use Photoshop in a new way to generate content that goes into a DPS publication. It's a really nice, easy way of doing some animation and then generating an image sequence for interactivity. Hope this is helpful. Thanks for the time.